A spontaneous moment, Sienna Hayes had never been one for social media theatrics. As a dedicated oceanographer specializing in deep-sea thermal vents, she spent more time with underwater drones than selfie sticks. But that particular afternoon felt different. After a grueling week of failed equipment tests and rejected grant proposals, she needed to remember why she loved this work. The Pacific stretched before her like liquid sapphire, and for once she allowed herself to simply exist in the moment. She kicked off her sandals and let the waves kiss her feet, her auburn hair catching the breeze as she spun slowly, arms outstretched. Her research assistant, Tommy, snapped a photo without her noticing and texted it with a laughing emoji. When she saw it, something made her pause. She looked genuinely happy, unguarded in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. Without overthinking, she posted it to her rarely used social media account with the caption, "Sometimes you need to dance with the ocean to remember why you study it." 3,000 miles away, Julian Cross sat in his glass-walled office overlooking downtown Seattle, listening to his chief financial officer drone about quarterly projections. At 39, he had built data stream technologies from a college dorm room idea into a billion-dollar enterprise. His algorithms helped corporations predict consumer behavior with unsettling accuracy. Yet lately, every achievement felt hollow, every milestone just another checkbox on an endless list. His mind wandered as he scrolled through his phone, a habit his executive coach called problematic avoidance behavior. Then his screen filled with movement and light. The photo appeared through a shared connection from a marine conservation group he supported financially. A woman danced at the water's edge, her expression pure and unfiltered. Something about her struck him like a physical force. She looked free in a way he could barely remember feeling. An impossible decision. Julian stared at the image for several minutes. His assistant, Marcus, noticed the unusual silence and paused mid-presentation. The team exchanged confused glances. Julian had built his reputation on focus and decisive action, not distracted phone-gazing. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against polished floors. The room fell silent. "Cancel my appointments for the next week," he announced. Marcus blinked rapidly, pen frozen midair. "Sir, you have the Investor Summit on Thursday, the product launch on Friday, and the Tokyo delegation arrives Monday morning." Julian was already gathering his tablet and jacket. "Reschedule everything. Delegate what you can, postpone the rest." He paused at the door, seeing the concern on their faces. "I know this seems irrational. Maybe it is. But I've spent 15 years being rational, and it's gotten me a corner office and an empty apartment. I need to do something that doesn't make sense for once." Tracking the coast within hours, Julian sat in his private jet somewhere over Montana. He had used his company's geolocation tools to identify the beach from the photo's metadata, a small coastal town called Harmony Bay in Northern California. His rational mind screamed that this was absurd. Successful entrepreneurs did not abandon critical business operations to chase strangers based on photographs. But a deeper instinct insisted this mattered more than any quarterly report. He researched Sienna during the flight. Dr. Sienna Hayes, oceanographer, 3 published papers on hydrothermal ecosystems, visiting researcher at the Coastal Marine Institute. 34 years old, originally from Colorado, no obvious romantic entanglements based on her minimal social media presence. Everything he learned only intensified his certainty that he needed to meet her. The tide pools encounter Sienna was collecting sediment samples near the rocky tide pools when she sensed someone watching. She looked up to find a tall man standing respectfully distant, expensive casual clothing somehow both out of place and oddly fitting against the rugged coastline. Dark hair with distinguished silver threading the temples, sharp eyes that held uncommon intensity. "I apologize for interrupting your work," he said, his voice carrying practiced confidence with an undercurrent of genuine nervousness. "Are you Dr. Sienna Hayes?" Every instinct told her to be cautious. Strange men did not simply materialize on isolated beaches knowing her name. Yet his body language suggested vulnerability beneath the obvious wealth and power. She stood slowly, keeping equipment between them as a barrier. "Depends on who's asking and why." The bold introduction. He took a careful step back, hands visible and non-threatening. "My name is Julian Cross. I realize this will sound completely irrational, but I saw your photograph this morning. I flew here from Seattle because I needed to meet the person behind that moment." Sienna's scientific mind immediately categorized this as either dangerously obsessive or spectacularly romantic. Possibly both. "You flew from Seattle because of a beach photo? That's not romantic, Mr. Cross. That's concerning." Julian laughed, a genuine sound that softened the strangeness. "You're absolutely right. I'm explaining this terribly. Please, let me try again." He pulled out his phone, showing verified business profiles and news articles. "I'm legitimate, I promise. I run a technology company. I'm staying at the Ocean View Inn in town for the next few days. No pressure, no expectations. But if you would consider having coffee with me tomorrow in a very public place, I would be grateful for the chance to explain myself better." A calculated risk, he placed a business card on a dry rock between them and stepped back. "Think about it. If you decide to call, I'll be there. If not, I'll respect that completely and leave you alone. Either way, thank you for posting that photo. It reminded me what it feels like to want something that isn't on a spreadsheet." He walked away before she could respond, leaving her alone with her samples, a business card, and a dozen unanswered questions. That evening, Sienna conducted thorough research. Julian Cross was exactly who he claimed to be: successful, legitimate, philanthropic, with no apparent red flags. But success did not explain why someone with unlimited options had fixated on her photograph. She studied the image again, trying to see what he had seen, just her dancing carelessly at the ocean's edge. Perhaps people who had everything were the loneliest of all. Against every cautious instinct, she found herself texting the number on his card at midnight. "Coffee at Harbor Grounds Cafe, 10 tomorrow morning. 1 hour, public place. Don't make me regret this." His response came within seconds. "I won't. Thank you for giving me a chance." Harbor Grounds Cafe occupied a prime corner on Main Street, windows overlooking the marina where fishing boats bobbed gently in their slips. Sienna arrived 15 minutes early, claiming her preferred table with a clear view of both entrances. She wore simple jeans and a navy sweater, deliberately avoiding any impression that she had dressed up for this interrogation disguised as coffee. Julian arrived exactly at 10, and she noticed the slight hesitation before he entered, the way he adjusted his collar. Small tells of genuine nervousness that made him seem less like the polished executive from news articles and more like an actual human being taking a risk. He carried himself with practiced confidence, but his eyes held uncertainty. Honest confessions. "Thank you for meeting me," Julian said, sliding into the chair across from her. "I took the liberty of ordering myself black coffee. Should I have waited?" Sienna leaned back, arms crossed in deliberate defensive posture. "Black coffee is fine. Now explain yourself. You have unlimited resources and options. Why chase a stranger across several states?" Julian was quiet, visibly choosing his words with care. "Have you ever built something so consuming that you forgot why you started? I created technology to help people connect, but somewhere along the way, I stopped connecting myself. My life became transactions and acquisitions. Then I saw your photo, and you looked like someone who still remembered how to exist in a moment without calculating its value. I wanted to remember that feeling." Sienna studied him carefully. "That's considerable weight to place on one photograph. I'm not a life coach or a spiritual guru." Unexpected depth. "I'm not asking you to fix me," Julian replied quickly. "I'm not looking for some profound transformation. I just wanted to meet the person behind that moment, to see if the feeling was real or just my imagination filling in gaps." Their coffee arrived, brought by Carol, who had served Sienna her morning caffeine for 3 years. Carol's raised eyebrow promised questions later. When they were alone again, Sienna asked, "What do you actually want from this conversation?" Julian smiled slightly. "Honestly? Maybe just to talk with someone who sees me as a stranger rather than a business opportunity or a net worth figure. When was the last time someone was genuinely skeptical of me? Most people agree with everything I say." Sienna found herself smiling despite her caution. "That sounds exhausting." The conversation flowed more easily than she had anticipated. When he asked about her work, his interest seemed genuine rather than performative. She described her research on deep-sea thermal ecosystems, expecting his attention to wander, but he engaged intelligently. The extended connection, their agreed-upon hour dissolved into 2, then 3. They walked along the marina afterward, conversation expanding beyond professional topics into personal histories. Julian spoke about growing up in suburban Minneapolis, building his first computer from salvaged parts in his father's garage, the early struggles before venture capital found him. Sienna shared her journey from a landlocked Colorado childhood to oceanography, the wonder of discovering entire ecosystems thriving in extreme conditions. The afternoon sun painted everything golden as they wandered past fishing boats and tourist shops. "Stay for dinner," Sienna heard herself say. "There's a place called Saltwater that serves incredible seafood. Tourists don't know about it yet." Julian's expression brightened. "I would genuinely love that." But as they turned toward the restaurant, Julian's phone erupted with vibrations. He silenced the first several calls, but when Marcus's name appeared with an urgent preview text, his expression shifted. Reality intrudes. "I need to take this," he said, apology evident in his voice. Sienna watched his face transform as he listened, the relaxed warmth replaced by sharp executive focus. "How bad is the situation? When did this start?" "No, don't authorize anything until I review the details personally. I'll call into the emergency meeting tonight." He ended the call and looked at her with genuine regret. "There's a crisis with an acquisition we've been negotiating for months. I need to handle this immediately." Sienna nodded, keeping her expression neutral. "You have responsibilities." "It's fine." Julian shook his head. "It's not fine. This is exactly what I came here to escape, and it followed me anyway." He ran his hand through his hair, frustration radiating from him. "Can I see you tomorrow? After I handle this crisis?" Sienna considered carefully. "Handle your emergency first. Then we'll see." The difficult night that evening, Sienna lay awake, questioning everything. She had watched friends date successful men who promised presence but delivered absence, who were always one phone call away from disappearing. Was Julian genuinely different, or just more skilled at the initial performance? The doubt gnawed at her usual confidence, but the next morning proved her cynicism premature. Julian appeared at the Coastal Marine Institute where she worked, not wearing business attire but borrowed fishing gear that made him look thoroughly out of place among the scientific equipment. "I made a decision," he announced without preamble. "The acquisition can wait or collapse entirely. Marcus nearly had a breakdown, but he's managing. I told my board I'm taking my first real vacation in 12 years. So, if you'll have me, I'm completely here with no divided attention." Testing the waters, Sienna studied him carefully, searching for performance but finding only sincerity. "You really walked away from a major business deal?" Julian nodded firmly. "I did, because I realized something last night while reviewing financial projections. I've spent 15 years building an empire that will exist long after I'm gone. But I can't remember the last time I did something that made me feel genuinely alive." "You make me feel alive, Sienna. This place does. I want more of that, even if it's just for a few days." Against her better judgment, she smiled. "Okay then. But if you're staying, you're helping with actual field work. Hope you don't mind getting wet and cold." The next 3 days existed outside normal time. Julian accompanied her on research expeditions, learning to collect samples without contaminating them and identify species markers. He was clumsy initially, dropping equipment and startling marine life, but he learned quickly and laughed at his own mistakes without ego. The storm, they talked endlessly on the research boat about everything from climate policy to childhood dreams. He described the loneliness of success, how achievements felt increasingly hollow without genuine connection. She shared her struggles with funding, the pressure to publish groundbreaking research, the fear that her work might not matter fast enough. On the third evening, a summer storm materialized with frightening speed. They had been exploring a remote rocky outcrop when the sky turned threatening. Rain arrived in sheets, wind transforming calm water into foam-topped chaos. "We need to get back now," Sienna shouted over the wind. But the research boat's engine sputtered and died at the worst possible moment. Julian moved without hesitation, helping secure expensive equipment while she worked frantically on the motor. His luxury watch got soaked, his borrowed clothing plastered to his skin, but he never complained or hesitated. The breakthrough, when a large wave nearly swept her toolkit overboard, he caught it with impressive reflexes, muscles straining. "Got it!" he yelled triumphantly despite being drenched and shivering. Sienna got the engine started on the fourth attempt and they raced back through rough water toward the harbor. By the time they reached the dock, both were shaking with cold and adrenaline. In the shelter of the harbor master's office, wrapped in emergency blankets, they looked at each other and started laughing. "So much for your relaxing vacation," Sienna said through chattering teeth. Julian pulled his blanket tighter, grinning widely. "Are you serious?" That was incredible. I haven't felt that present in years. No projections, no strategies, just wind and water and working together. I felt useful in a way that had nothing to do with money or influence. The declaration. His expression grew serious, the humor fading into something deeper. "Sienna, I need to tell you something important. This isn't just about escaping my regular life. It's about you specifically. The way you see the world, the passion you bring to everything, the fact that you called me out from the very beginning. I haven't felt this way about anyone in longer than I can remember." Sienna's heart hammered against her ribs. "Julian, we've known each other for 3 days total." He leaned forward, blanket falling from his shoulders. "I know it's absurd and impulsive and probably a dozen things my therapist would question. But I've spent my entire adult life being careful and calculated. Where has it gotten me? Successful and empty. I don't want to be careful about this, about you." Before she could formulate a response, his phone rang again. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. Julian looked at it, then at Sienna, and made a deliberate choice. He silenced the call without answering. "Whatever it is can wait," he said firmly. "Right now, I'm exactly where I want to be, with exactly who I want to be with." In that moment, Sienna felt something fundamental shift inside her. Maybe this was reckless. Maybe it would end badly. But maybe, just maybe, it was worth the risk of believing in something improbable and beautiful. The morning after morning brought clarity and complications in equal measure. Julian's phone displayed 43 missed calls and a text from Marcus that simply read, "Emergency. We need to talk immediately." He sat on his hotel balcony watching sunrise paint the ocean in shades of amber and rose. Sienna would be awake soon, probably already at the institute preparing for research. 3 days had turned his world inside out, and now reality demanded its accounting. The call with Marcus was brutal and direct. "The acquisition is collapsing," Marcus said without preamble or pleasantries. "Nakamura Corporation is threatening to withdraw if you don't return immediately for final negotiations." "The board is furious, Julian. You've invested 2 years in this deal." Julian closed his eyes. "I understand the situation." Marcus's frustration crackled through the connection. "Do you? Because from here it looks like a midlife crisis with an extremely expensive price tag. This acquisition represents $400 million in expansion. You don't throw that away for a vacation romance." Difficult choices. The words stung because they carried undeniable truth. This was irresponsible by any rational measure. He had built his company through discipline and sacrifice. One photograph should not undo decades of careful planning. Yet something deeper insisted the calculation itself was wrong. "What if I've been measuring value in the wrong currency?" Julian said quietly. "What if success isn't the same as meaning?" Marcus was silent for a long moment. "You're really serious about this woman?" Julian thought about Sienna's laugh, her passion for her work, the way she had called him out without hesitation. "I think I might be, which terrifies me because you're right. It makes no logical sense." Marcus sighed heavily. "Then figure it out fast. You have 48 hours before the deal dies completely. After that, no negotiation will resurrect it." The call ended, leaving Julian staring at the ocean, facing the choice between the life he had built and a possibility he could not quantify. Sienna's wisdom, he found Sienna at the research center, cataloging samples under a microscope. She looked up when he entered, and her smile faded when she read his expression. "What happened?" He told her everything without filtering or softening the details. The collapsing acquisition, the ultimatum, the choice between his company and this fragile new connection. Sienna listened without interrupting, her scientific mind processing information and implications. "You have to go back," she said when he finished. Julian felt his heart sink. "That's not what I wanted to hear." She set down her pipette carefully. "I know, but Julian, you can't destroy your life because of a connection we made in 3 days. That's not romantic. It's reckless and ultimately unsustainable." She chose her words with visible care. "What we have feels real. I feel it too, deeply. But real doesn't mean we abandon everything else. If this matters, it will survive you handling your responsibilities properly." The truth, Julian wanted to argue, to insist that sometimes you had to choose passion over pragmatism. But Sienna's calm rationality was part of what drew him to her. She was not impressed by grand gestures or dramatic declarations. She valued substance over spectacle. "You're right," he admitted reluctantly. "I hate it, but you're right. I need to go back and handle this properly." He reached for her hand. "But Sienna, I'm not done with this, with us. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I need you to believe I'm coming back." She squeezed his hand. "Then come back after you've handled your business. After you've had time to think clearly away from vacation brain and ocean sunsets. If you still feel this way in a month, we'll figure out what comes next together." The timeline felt impossible. A month seems like forever. Sienna smiled sadly. "That's exactly how long my current research grant runs. After that, I have flexibility. But you need to be certain, Julian. Really certain. Not just caught up in the romance of it all." The long distance. The next 3 weeks blurred together in marathon negotiation sessions and diplomatic dinners. Julian saved the acquisition, though the final terms were less favorable than originally hoped. His board forgave his absence after seeing the results. His company stabilized and even strengthened. But every night he called Sienna without fail. They talked about their days in detail, her research breakthroughs, his corporate challenges, the mundane details that built intimacy more surely than grand gestures ever could. She sent him photos of unusual deep-sea specimens. He sent her articles about marine conservation funding opportunities. They argued about environmental policy and laughed about terrible institutional coffee. They shared frustrations and small victories. 3 weeks became 4, then 5. Her research project concluded successfully with promising data. His schedule cleared enough to breathe properly. "I'm coming to Seattle," she announced on one of their evening calls. "I have meetings about my next grant proposal anyway. Maybe we could see each other while I'm there." The Seattle visit. Julian smiled at the understatement. "Maybe? Sienna, I've been counting days like a teenager waiting for summer break. Of course we're seeing each other." She arrived on a Thursday evening. He met her at the airport, and the moment he saw her walking through the terminal, every doubt and question dissolved completely. This was not fantasy or escape or midlife crisis. This was real and complicated and worth every difficult conversation ahead. They spent 3 days navigating his world as she had let him navigate hers. She met his colleagues, sat through a dinner with investors, toured his office, and never once pretended to be anything other than exactly herself. His colleagues were charmed by her directness. Marcus grudgingly admitted he might have judged the situation too quickly. Even his notoriously critical board members found her impressive. On her last evening in Seattle, they stood on his apartment balcony overlooking the city. Lights stretched to every horizon, millions of lives intersecting in the urban sprawl below. The question. "It's beautiful," Sienna said softly. "Completely different from the ocean, but beautiful in its own way." Julian moved closer. "Could you see yourself here sometimes? Not giving up your work or sacrificing what matters to you, but finding a way to build something between both our worlds?" She turned to face him, expression serious and certain. "I've been thinking about exactly that. There are marine research opportunities here, programs that need partnerships and expertise. I could split my time, spend part of each year on the coast doing field work, part here collaborating with university programs. It would be complicated and require constant coordination. Julian felt hope expand in his chest. Complicated I can handle. Impossible I cannot, but you need to ask me properly. No more half measures or maybes. What do you actually want, Julian? The commitment. He took both her hands, feeling the calluses from field work, the strength that came from years of fighting for what she believed in. I want to build a real life with you. However that looks, whatever compromises we need to make, I want the arguments and the challenges and the moments when we drive each other crazy. I want to support your work and have you challenge mine. I want all of it, Sienna, the real, complicated, unglamorous truth of building a life together. She smiled, the same smile from that photograph that had started everything, but richer now with knowledge and choice and commitment. Then let's figure it out together, one day at a time. They kissed as the city hummed below them, two people from different worlds choosing deliberately to build a bridge between them. It would not be easy or simple. There would be conflicts about priorities, frustrations with distance, moments when they questioned the decision. But standing there with her, Julian understood something fundamental that all his business success had never taught him. 6 months later, the photograph had not shown him an escape from his life. It had shown him what his life was missing, and Sienna had not been looking for rescue or completion. She had been whole on her own. What they offered each other was not completion, but expansion, the courage to be vulnerable, the willingness to grow, the faith that some connections were worth the inconvenience and effort. 6 months later, Julian sold a significant portion of his company's stake, restructuring his role to allow genuine flexibility. Sienna accepted a research position that let her split time between coasts, conducting fieldwork and collaborating with university programs. They bought a house together in Harmony Bay with room for her laboratory equipment and his home office. It was not a fairy tale ending where everything became magically easy. But it was real, and it was theirs, built not on a single photograph but on 1,000 small choices to keep choosing each other every single day. The beach. Walks. Sometimes on quiet evenings they would walk the beach where they first met, waves whispering against the sand. Sienna would catch Julian staring at her with that same wonder from the beginning, that look of someone who still could not quite believe his luck. "What are you thinking about?" she would ask, squeezing his hand. He would smile and pull her closer. "I'm thinking how grateful I am that I was impulsive enough to get on that plane, and that you were brave enough to give a complete stranger a chance despite every good reason not to." Sienna would laugh and lean into him. "Best decision I ever made, even though you were definitely concerning at first." And the ocean would whisper its approval around them, patient witness to all the ways people find each other in an uncertain world, proving that sometimes the most logical thing to do is something that makes no sense at all. The end.